What's up, Digidestins? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today we're going to be talking none other than a possible restriction list, shall we say. Well, what do we take into account with these cards? We're going to take in a lot of information, talk about a lot of things, so without further ado, let's get into the video and talk about it. So, as everyone knows, that we have ban and restriction lists all the time. So, things to think about here is that the last one introduced some key pieces were very much removed from the format. First off, Calling from Darkness was brought down to 1. Most decks only played it at 1, so it doesn't hurt that they went from making this like a 4 of down to the 1 of. It just makes it so that you can't overexert using this, and it future-proofs future decks. You can't spam it. You can't use it to just cycle in more and more broken pieces. It's understandable. It just allows it for a low cost removal, gets you 2 pieces back, and it was a consistency base. So removing consistency pieces from the game really does help out at times. And Calling from Darkness, really the only deck that was playing it above a 1 of, maybe 2 of, was a few of like Minervamon. And then the new Imperial Dramon would have played it at 3 to 4. And outside of that, no. We didn't really need that in the format. Calling from Darkness being at 1 is fine. It's a good cycling utility card. Then Sunrise Buster got hit because it was such an impressive security control-ish card. You know, once you put it with Crossheart, it was broken. Yellow Hybrid spammed it. And any other yellow-red base deck they would splash this in and then just punish your opponent for just playing the game. And it becomes unpredictable on what amount of tamers your opponent's going to have for a response of this, because it plays 1 for free. And if you are playing a tamer-centric deck, hits in, oh, congratulations, you have now more tamers on the board, and now this card punishes you for just playing the game. And that really, really hurts more when Digimon is a game of math at times, and you're trying to math everything out, and just one stray tamer and security can just change all math directions, and you're like, well, now my Digimon's gone next turn because of Sunrise Buster. So it was good of a hit to let it go, and it was just very much brought into check. And then Shoutmon ×4, the consistency of the on-play drawing 2, which was huge, and then the end of attack skill to blow himself up and just put everything underneath one of your tamers just to recycle in. The more and more you had in hand, the more spammability. It was a consistency piece, and it was threatening lethal. So it was really good that they went for this, because we would have had just Cross ×4 meta. And yes, we know that it got hit ahead of time, and it proves that even new cards can get hit on restriction lists. So outside of that, Europe, Asia countries, and well, Asia countries, not Europe countries, Asia countries do have restrictions on these. They are getting the Revival Collection this month, so this will unleash these cards into the meta at full strength. So we should be able to see some changes up there as well. And then outside of that, we know that Jet Sylphie got hit, Tommy got hit, then you had Duro Gray, and then Mega Digimon Fusion, which was a very powerful card. Restriction of Savior Huck, then Reinforced Mem Boost, Ice Wall, Eismon, you know, all the good stuff here. And then we had like Argomon and Hidden Potential Discovered, all hit down to 1, and Mega Digimon Fusion being just the band. So that's something to really look at when you're doing some stuff like this, is what could be hit on our side. Well, first off, let's take a look at what decks are really dominating right now. We're in EX4 right now. Let's go to BT-11 first, because this is going to be very much what our future meta is going to look like. So, and that's going to really make or break things. First off, Shoutmon and Crossheart were just oppressive decks. They already hit it. We already have the restrictions in it. ×4 was restricted. We probably won't see this go crazy here. Then we had Black War Greymon X Antibody, so let's take a look at that real quick. and what they were kind of just going for. So let's see. Let's get a little closer up image with Twitter here. So let's take a look here. This card here, a full play set. Then you had Greymon's Metal Greymon X Antibody, Metal Greymon, Agumons, which is fine. The Agumons aren't really too oppressive. I mean, you get the top end here, but I don't think they're going to hit the top end if they were going to do anything. But you take on the data here. This deck took 105. No other deck combined reached that except for the Cross Hearts if you combine them. But Cross Heart, they split into two different variables because times 7 and the Mervamon version of Cross Heart times 4 played completely differently. One controlled a little bit more, this one hit harder. Then you had Grand Wagamon. This is Grandis. So Grandis only is meta dependent, but it is an OTK deck at the end of the day. You know, things that really just pull it ahead are usually because the ability to clear out all security at one turn from your Grand Quagga, but also the fact is being able to Digivolve for 1 on top of this through an X antibody evolution is huge in some circumstances. So that's something we're going to take a look at shortly. But right now, we can go into BT-12 very easily. As you can see, the rest aren't really oppressive, you know, tearing down walls or kind of just murdering your opponent right away. But if we go right into BT-12's environment, BT-12 only had a smaller run because of reasons. The reasons was that they have EX4 in between BT-12 and BT-13 and a revival collection as well. EX4 is pushing that. So right now, the top deck in that competitive environment is 46 for Red, Black, Greymon. This created another problem because it got a second wave of support immediately, creating a very different line of play. It's not Black War Greymon anymore. Far from it. It's now Greymon. You get to play either version very nicely, but if you notice, what is the common trend here? X Antibodies, Cool Boys, Greymon X, I mean, Hades Force. They're playing the exact same cards, just a different top end. There's not much change between the two if you look at it very closely here. You know, I wish I could pull... Can I? Let's see if I can get this to split up for you. Boop. I did not want that. I did not want that. And where are you? Here we go. There we go. So, if you look at it, they are playing very similar lists. The only thing that changes up is basically now they change up in the new Greymon lines. They added new cards. Agumon got a new card added, so they can take out this old one. Yuya's still in there. They add new Tai. Cool Boy's still the same. X Antibody's still the same. Hades Force is still the same. The top end changed, as I mentioned. And then they basically took out the Digivolve Metal Greymon for this Greymon here. So, what does that kind of just tell us here? That Greymon Tribal is at a point where it's had too much support. And to be honest with you, I think taking care of that issue is controlling the problem childs in that deck. First off, Greymon X Antibody. The reason why I'm going to talk about this card is because your turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a card with Greymon in its name, reduce the Digivolution by 1 for each color card of that card. So, yes, in normal circumstance, a reduced cost is never bad. In normal circumstances. The problem comes down to is that it also has an inheritable protection ability on top of it. If this was just straight up vanilla for its inheritable, this card would have been fine. it wouldn't have created a much of an issue, but that all turns effects of making it so it has a small protection, which then later on, all the other support that it has basically can climb up and have a protection and don't care. That is going to be huge here. So when this Digimon would Digivolve into a card with Greymon in its name, reduce the de-evolution cost by 1 for each of the color of that card. So, as I mentioned before, reducing, this creates a bridge gap for very powerful ultimates and everything like that. The reason why we have to worry about this is that people might argue, well, green gets to do it all the time. Well, let's take Digisorption. Digisorption. Let's see. Blossomon. So let's take a look at this. So Digisorption 3, when one of your Digimon digivolves into this card from hand, you may suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the memory cost of that Digievolution by 3. So it comes in for free. What's going on here? It's a vanilla for that trade-off. And you're suspending your Digimon for that cost. So you're already putting yourself in a condition where you're going to have to be swung at. You're not getting any free value out of it. I mean, we can go Argomon. Argomon. Let's even take a look at this. This Argomon here, for it's free, same thing, but this is restricted to 1 because when attacking, you may play 1 level 3 Digimon from your hand suspended without paying its memory cost. This helped ramp you too much, so they restricted it. To be honest with you, it also made it so you could deck create a little bit better, because all you were doing was playing 4 Blossom, 4 Argo. You really weren't testing any other Digimon. You were kind of restricted to just playing those because they were just so good. Why wouldn't you? And then you have like the 2-cost Argo with Digisorption. So if we can just get that keyword up. Digisorption. So let's even take this even further. There we go. So taking into account of how many Digimon with Digisorption there are and how competitively viable they are is completely different. I mean, even Sherrymon, it's not a full free cost. It costs you 1 to do the Digisorption, but it also has an effect to redirect the attack, but no inheritable for that reduce. But we have like Pistamon, that is Digisorption 2, brings it down to a 1 cost. All turns Digimon gains 1000 DP for each of your opponent's other Digimon. No protection effect. So if an effect would destroy the Digimon, that's okay. I mean, even with Entomon here, it becomes down to 1 cost. It gets to if you have 2 or more suspended Digimon in play, unsuspend this Digimon. That's fine. But there's nothing there to give it protection. So, why are we looking at it like this? Well, that protection effect is what's helping the deck a lot more. And, I mean, being able to reduce 2 costs is not a bad trade-off. But what gets really out of hand is once you combo it in, let's say, with a Cool Boy. Your opponent chokes you to 1. Normally, that would just pass turn. Well, with a Cool Boy, you just go Greymon X Antibody, free memory gain. Now, this is a free, basically, plus turn. Put X Antibody option underneath, swing in, get into Metal Greymon X Antibody, or, Black War Greymon X Antibody, or Galmon. Because they're both X antibodies, instantly from your ultimate, you go right into Mega. Your opponent loses out on their Digimon, and they're kind of just screwed there. I mean, that is important to look at it sometimes, is just how much memory a climb can happen. And with the number of Cool Boys issue here as well, I wouldn't be surprised if restricted to 1 or none, basically. This card could get down to 0. Very easily, in my opinion. The reason for that is not because of the top effect. It's never the top effect. It's the consistency part of Cool Boy here. When one of your Digimon digivolves into the same level Digimon with X antibody traits, you may suspend this tamer, gain 1 memory, and draw a card. Alphamon played this in complete conjunction and was oppressive with it. this card just really changes tides of games way too easily, just because, oh man, I Digivolve for one. Oh, you hit my 2 cool boys in security, which can happen. And I played a cool boy the last turn. Now I have a basically 1 Digivolve plus 4 draw, and then basically 3 memory game. That is not in any way capacity a fair and balanced way of balancing your game. It creates too much of an issue with that alone. And then you have X Antibody here that just basically says, hey, yeah, protection skills, be able to climb up. The card could go down to 1. It doesn't really do anything outside of X Antibody decks and maybe, D-Reaper, but the ability that it can Digivolve your Digimon or anything like that is really powerful because it's not once per turn. If they put in a once per turn clause so that you can't just spam it, I think this card would have been more beneficially fine, and that comes down to being a lot of its issues there. I mean, next we should probably talk about the elephant in the room, the Garurumon promos. These cards probably could go. Once the reprint happens, they'll probably just hit them. But I know there are a few people that say, Garurumon, that this card can go. Oh, where is he? Where are you? Some people think if you negate the bridge in between these two are fine if you just get rid of this one and bring it down to 1, because it gives itself an unsuspend on its own, so that where Garurumon gets 2 swings in, and then, I mean, it's not a bad trade-off. I think this is fine. If you hit this one, it might be enough to just give it a weakening, but to be honest with you, it's the ability to kill on 5 is what's really the problem. So I think where Garurumon going is probably the better pick, just because swinging in, getting multiple security checks right afterwards, and then you climb for free, it gets really ridiculous. And I think that might be the better way of going about it. Garurumon, yes, the draw is phenomenal. If it was just once per turn, it would have been fine. I think once per turn would have been good. But what's going to happen is if you hit this, people will just play the waiting game just a little bit more until they get to the 8 card minimum in hand, and then go combo wombo. And what are you going to do once you go combo wombo? This deck just doesn't stop unless they hit an option. And every battle, there's just very little potential of it not dying because of how the game works. Security isn't manipulated as much. And just whatever's placed on that 5 is all you have. And once you OTK them out, they're just kind of screwed. And then finally, another card we're going to talk about is Hades Force here. Hades Force is basically one of those cards that is just oppressive. It's a 5 cost at most times, and then you just get to blow up your opponent's stuff. It's ridiculous. I know Death X is on people's radar, bringing down to 1. It makes sense, but at the same time, Death X isn't even played in the meta. But even bringing him down to 1, everyone plays him at 1. It just basically buffers it out so you can't just switch into a meta of playing him at 2, which is understandable. I don't think that's too much of an issue or too much to ask for. And then we have Okuamon here. This is a possibility here, I think, just because of the ability of suspending your opponent. When this Digimon becomes suspended, lose 1 memory until you enter, that blanket and piercing effect is huge in most circumstances. The dex actually gets a little more fair if you hit it that way, but you could hit Grand Kuwagamon and just make it so the deck just doesn't OTK anymore, and it becomes more of a control strategy with Grandis. I mean, that's just kind of how you would go about hitting this deck if it's really just continues to be oppressive. But all in all, I think this is really all you would just kind of do for the problem children, is in some capacity these cards here get hit, and that should loosen up the meta a bit where it'd be more balanced and fun, in my opinion. And I think Cool Boy and X Antibody need a good hit, and that's the reason for this. I'm going to say it, is that X Antibody decks and OTK decks are really much a problem in this game. The game is not designed for OTKing. It is about back and forth. It's more of a mid-range game. It is not about just clearing all security in one check and then your opponent has to answer you within that time limit. It's too much in certain circumstances, especially with all these protections. If the OTK decks didn't have as much protection on them, I think they would have been fine. Because then all the protections that they needed were off the chart. And then you OTK, hey, at least I can respond and kill the thing before you just kill me. And that would have been a lot more balanced in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Tell me down in the comments what cards you would restrict if I missed any. Hopefully I did it. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and peace.